Hi, I'm Dave. I'm here with my colleague Courtney. Today we're going to show you how to install a Mamava ADA lactation pod and share some helpful tips along the way. The assembly process requires at least 2 people who can easily lift weight overhead and 3 to 4 hours to complete. We'll walk you through everything you need to know from unpacking your pod to testing it for moms, but we recommend consulting your assembly instructions for more detail. Let's get started. First, we'll cover moving your pallet to the installation site and marking the space you'll need to begin pod assembly. Move the pallet as close as possible to the final pod location. Make sure you have a level surface, ample ceiling height, and space for the assembly process. If you aren't able to have the pallet close at hand, you'll need more space to stage the parts before assembly begins. The Mamava ADA requires 5.5 by 9.5 feet of floor space and 8.5 feet of ceiling clearance. Hot tip, remember that the door needs 3 feet to swing open. It's a good idea to mark these dimensions on the floor with tape to visualize the area you need. The pod also requires one 20 amp, 120 volt electrical outlet and reliable access to cell service. Hot tip, for additional site considerations, reference the Preparing for Your Mamava document on mamava.com. Here are all the tools you need to assemble your pod. Before you begin, make sure you have the following: a 2 to 6 foot step ladder, a level, the longer the better, a 9/16 inch socket wrench. Hot tip, an extension for your 9/16 socket wrench comes in handy. The number 3 Phillips head screwdriver that comes with the pod. If you have an extra one on hand, assembly will go a little faster. The 5.5mm Allen wrench that also comes with your pod. Hot tip, we recommend wearing light working gloves as some components have sharp edges. We do not recommend using any power tools, as these may damage the hardware. Now we'll cover unpacking your Mamava pod. As you open boxes, inspect for any damage that may have occurred during shipping. If you discover any damaged packaging or product, please use the damage claim form included with your pod's documentation. Set aside the packaging to be recycled. Inside the box labeled Instructions Enclosed, you'll find your assembly instructions, lock manual, lock key, Allen wrench, hardware and screws, and Phillips head screwdriver. Read the assembly instructions carefully and save the lock documents for future use. Now that you've unpacked your pod, we'll show you how to create the pod's foundation with the floor pan and chassis. Begin assembling your pod by placing the front and back floor pans and left and right chassis on the floor. Hot tip, place the chassis so that the hook is on the same edge as the floor pan. If you're assembling the pod in its final location, start with these components in the center of the space you've taped off. If you're planning to move the pod to its final location, wait to move it until it's completely assembled. Next, fasten the floor pans and the chassis together. Now that your pod's foundation is secure, we'll show you how to install the seats and counters. First, place the left outlet box on top of the left chassis and fasten them together. Repeat for the right side. Hot tip, be sure to cut the cable tie around the electrical connections inside the outlet boxes. Next, put the left counter on top of the left outlet box and fasten them together. Repeat for the right side. Then add the middle counter between the left and right counters and fasten at both ends. Position one of the seats on top of the left chassis. Fasten the bottom of the seat to the chassis. Next, starting with the top screw, fasten the end of the seat to the outlet box. Repeat with the other seat. If you ordered the refrigerator cabinet module with your pod, it will take the place of the right seat. At this point, it's important to make sure the pod is level to ensure that the wall panels are aligned and that the door will open and close when fully assembled. To check whether or not your pod is level, it's a good idea to start with the pod on its caster wheels. Using your wrench, raise all 8 leveling feet until the casters are just touching the floor. When the pod is fully supported on its casters, lower the leveling feet by hand. Once they begin to support the chassis, use your socket wrench. Use your level to ensure that all sides are straight and that each component meets the adjoining part evenly. Hot tip, once the chassis base is level, it's best not to move or adjust the pod until it's completely assembled. Check that all screws are tight before continuing. Now we'll show you how to install the back wall panels. First, Hook the back middle wall panel onto the back of the middle counter, ensuring it's aligned with the channel. Then repeat this process for the back left and right wall panels. Use the Allen wrench to lock the back wall panels together. Hot tip: the right hole locks with a clockwise rotation, and the left hole locks with a counterclockwise rotation. Lastly, put the adhesive covers over the holes. Now it's time to secure the outlet boxes and counters to the wall panels. First, loosely fasten your back wall panels to the counters, outlet boxes, and chassis. Ensure the wall panels are aligned before tightening down the screws. The tops of the wall panels should line up. Next up, how to wire the outlet boxes. First, thread the smaller end of the GFCI wire through the hole on the left side of the middle back wall panel, into the middle counter, and then to the left junction box in the left outlet box. Next, feed the right junction box wire through the middle counter to the left outlet box and connect it to the left junction box. Hot tip: if you have a fridge cabinet module, feed that junction box wire through the right outlet box and middle counter to the left outlet box. Thread the pod control device, or PCD, power cord through the middle counter to the left outlet box and connect it to the left junction box. Then fasten the middle wire cover onto the bottom of the middle counter. Now it's time to install the front wall panels. First, hook the left front wall panel onto the chassis. Hot tip: make sure the holes in the seat line up with the threaded holes in the wall panel. Then repeat with the right side's front wall panel. Now loosely fasten both wall panels to the seats, or fridge cabinet if your model has one, and chassis. At this point, it's helpful to check the vertical alignment of the front panels. Hold your level on the vertical edge and adjust until level. You may have to loosen the seat and chassis screws going into the wall panel to adjust it. Remember to retighten the screws when you're done. Now we'll show you how to install the header and roof pans. First, put the header between the front wall panels, making sure the header bracket slides into the corresponding slot. Then use the Allen wrench to lock the header into place. Make sure the top edges of all three wall panels are aligned and level with one another. Be sure to recheck the vertical alignment of the door frame to make sure it's square for proper function of both the door and the lock. Once the sides of the door frame are vertical and the header is square, tighten all the screws in the wall panels to the chassis and seats. Next, slide both side roof pans between the front and back wall panels, making sure their tabs go into the slots on the top edges of the wall panels. Lower the front roof pan into the slots between the side roof pans on the top edges of the header. Carefully thread the electrical connections on the front wall panels into this roof pan. Before you lower the rear roof pan into place, thread the PCD power cord, it should be coming out of the top of the middle back wall panel, through the access hole in the back side of the pan and lower it into place. Once all four pans are in position, fasten them to each other and to the wall panels. Now you're ready to wire the pod's roof pan and connect your pod control device. Plug the PCD power cord into it and flip up the antennas. Connect the left side of the rear wire harness to the single lead wire harness. Then connect the single lead wire harness to the front left wall panel wire. Connect the right side of the rear wire harness to the Y lead wire harness. Finally, connect the Y lead wire harness to both the front fan wire and the front right wall panel. Now we'll show you how to install the pod's beauty panels. If you plan to move the pod to its final location, we recommend you install the beauty panels last, so move ahead to the next chapter. Install the beauty panels under the seats by hooking the bottom flange to the chassis. Insert the top flange under the seat. Use your Allen wrench to lock the panels into place. Then place the self-adhesive covers over the holes. Now you're ready to install the pod's graphics panels and roof caps. Installing the flexible graphics panels requires at least 2 people, but having extra helping hands is always a good idea. Before you insert the panels into their channels, cover the top corners with painter's tape to prevent scratching. With one person outside the pod and another one inside on a ladder, pass the graphics panel over the top. The person on the ladder can then slide the panel into the channels. The panel should slide in easily. If there's any resistance, stop, identify the problem, and try again. Forcing the panel can damage it or pop it out of the channels. Once the panel has slid partially into place, the person on the floor can guide it the rest of the way. You may have to push gently on the bottom of the panel to slide behind the lip of the chassis. Repeat this process for the other side. Next, lay both roof caps on top of the unit. Pass the PCD antennas through the holes in the roof cap. Next, place the two graphics caps over the top edge of the graphics panels and fasten them to the wall edges. The last step is to drop the center perforated roof pan into the opening in the roof and fasten it to the roof pans. Now it's time to install the door. First, hang the door on the hinges. Then, fasten the door frame brackets between the header and front wall panels. The last step is to connect the closer arm and adjust the kick plate using the screws on the back of the door. Now it's time to test your pod to make sure it's fully functional. You'll find a complete post-installation checklist included in the assembly instructions. First, plug the pod into the wall outlet, making sure that the cord isn't in a walkway. Then check that the LED lights and fans turn on when you enter the pod, and turn off after about 30 seconds. Make sure that the door closes easily and doesn't rub on the door frame or the floor. Check that the deadbolt lock engages. The lights and fans should stay on while the deadbolt is latched. If the door rubs against the frame or the lock doesn't fully engage, make sure that the door opening is square and its sides are aligned. If not, level the pod again by adjusting the leveling feet accessed behind the seat's beauty panels. Hot tip: for more information on leveling your pod, consult our leveling video. When you're sure your pod is level and everything is aligned correctly, we recommend that you test the keypad code. Congrats! You've successfully installed your Mamava ADA pod. Now it's time to run through the complete post-installation checklist and let our customer experience team know your pod is ready. Remember, before you open your pod to moms, make sure to test all the functions using the Mamava app. If you have questions or run into problems, additional details and information can be found in your assembly instructions and your owner's manual. But don't forget, Mamava's customer experience team is always here for you. Call us at 802-347-2111.